Well, bless his heart, Hilljack Bob decided to visit Nicaragua. Said he saw it on the travel channel between swamp people and moonshiners. Figured if those fellas could find adventure, so could he. Bob packed his best going-to-town clothes, a couple of packs of his mama's biscuits, and his trusty banjo. He was ready for adventure, or at least a week, without his cousins bothering him. He'd heard tell of this fancy cigar factory down there and figured, why not? Bob always liked a good stow-chewing tobacco, reckoned cigars were just bigger, fancier versions. He landed in Managua, big old grin on his face, looking like a possum at a pie-eating contest. He hopped off the plane, smelled that humid air, and said, "Well, I tell you what, this ain't Dothan, Alabama." He found his way to the cigar factory, this big old place with more Spanish being spoken than English. Bob just smiled and nodded, figuring smiles a universal language, like a good spittoon. He was ready to learn about cigars and maybe find himself a genuine Panama hat while he was at it. Now, rolling cigars ain't as easy as it looks, even for a fella with fingers as nimble as Bob when he's picking a banjo. He started off clumsy, cigars looking like they'd been wrestled by a squirrel. The other rollers, seasoned pros with years under their belts, just chuckled and shook their heads. But Bob, he was determined. He practiced and practiced, hands moving faster than a lizard on a hot rock. He learned the feel of the leaves, the right amount of pressure, the rhythm of the roll. Pretty soon, he was cranking out cigars that weren't half bad, even if they did have a slight aroma of biscuits and swamp mud. The other rollers, they warmed up to him seeing his dedication. They started sharing their secrets, teaching him the finer points of the craft. Bob, he soaked it up like a sponge, always eager to learn something new, especially if it involved tobacco. Word got around the factory about this crazy American and his newfound cigar rolling skills. The owner, a distinguished gentleman named Don Fernando, decided to see what all the fuss was about. Now Don Fernando, he was a serious man, passionate about his cigars. But even he couldn't help but crack a smile when he saw Bob covered in tobacco, grinning like a possum eating a sweet potato. Don Fernando watched Bob work, his surprise growing with every perfectly rolled cigar. He saw the passion, the dedication, and maybe just a touch of that old Hilljack ingenuity. He clapped Bob on the shoulder, a gesture of respect, and said in his thick accent, "You have the heart of a true cigar maker, my friend." From that day on, Bob and Don Fernando were like peas and carrots. They'd spend hours talking tobacco, swapping stories, and sipping on some potent Nicaraguan coffee. Bob even taught Don Fernando a few banjo tunes, though the sound of deliverance echoing through the factory did raise a few eyebrows. One day Don Fernando approached Bob with an idea. "My friend," he said, "you have a gift. I believe you can create a new blend, something special, something unique." Bob, he was hesitant at first, but Don Fernando insisted. He gave Bob free rein of the humidor, access to the rarest tobaccos, and his full support. Bobby went to work experimenting with different leaves, different combinations, guided by his nose and his gut. He'd spend hours in the humidor, surrounded by the rich aroma of tobacco, like a kid in a candy store. Finally, he emerged triumphant with a cigar he called Hilljack's Holler. It was a bold blend, strong and earthy, with a hint of sweetness like a good pecan pie. The test batch was a hit. People loved the unique flavor, the boldness, the story behind it. Don Fernando was ecstatic. He knew he had a winner on his hands. "Bob," he declared, "we will make your blend famous. We will plant a whole field just for Hilljack's Holler."